2025 is already being described by many analysts as a turning point for digital assets, not just because of price movements, but because of how fast stablecoins and blockchain-based payments are moving into the mainstream, especially in emerging markets like Nigeria, from rising global adoption to growing use of dollar-backed stablecoins for everyday payments, savings, cross-border trade. The conversation around digital money is no longer theoretical. It's now about real economic impact. To help us break it down, I'm joined by Lasberry Oludimos, Vice President, Global Operations, and Managing Director, Yellow Card Nigeria. It's great to have you on the show. Happy New Year.
Thank you so much, Ladi. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Fantastic. Great to have you. And, definitely 2025, huge year for digital assets, stable coins. Even though we didn't see that much price movement, there did, peak at some point. That's talking about Bitcoin, and we see that major drop there. But technology-wise, regulation, huge year, 2025. Talk to me about what the trend you saw so far and in previous year, and what you're seeing right now.
Thank you so much, Ladi. 2025 was actually that year that the space, the ecosystem needed to establish themselves properly, right? And if you look at globally and also what is happening within the continent, you can see that a lot of things happened within 2025, right? We saw regulations. We also saw so many organizations going public. And we saw some people being pardoned, some being prosecuted and all that. So when it comes to regulation, I think the big deal for 2025 was the Genius Act, right? And even before the Genius Act, I think about March 2025, Trump actually signed an executive directive. And that executive directive created a strategic Bitcoin reserve for the United States. Right? And that was just to consolidate all the BTC that have been seized, right, over a long period of time to have it kept in the reserve. And the United States wasn't interested in selling again, but they just wanted to keep it for the Treasury, right? So that sent a very strong message to the government. Right? You can see that the government are now having digital assets as part of their treasury. Then fast forward to July 2025, we saw the emergence of the Genius Act. And the Genius Act is was like a foundation for every other market that we're not actually thinking about legislating the space to start thinking about the laws, the policies, the frameworks, right, to put in place to ensure that they don't send innovation out of their market space. And one important thing about the Genius Act, right, for stablecoin issuers, it's actually a federal law, right, and it gave opportunity to even smaller issuers to be regulated under the state law, as long as their framework, the state framework, is substantially the same standard with that of the federal law. And you can also see from the Genius Act that there was some sort of priority claim provision in that act. What that means is for every holder of stable coins, right, in case the issuer goes into liquidation, there is a priority claim for every holder of stable coins, even before the other creditors, right? So that actually improved the consumer protection around the whole space. And so many regulations actually towing that same line. And also in 2025, we saw the full implementation of the MiCA Act, right? Where you just have one act and about 27 other markets are complying with it. And once you're able to get a license in one, you're able to operate in other markets within the EU, right? For companies that wanted to scale and were not really interested or didn't really have the resources to keep going from one state to another, trying to collaborate with the regulators and obtaining license, that was a very big move for them, right? In terms of what the regulatory space looks like. You can now apply for the license and you're able to operate in 27 other markets. So coming down to the continent, we also saw some movement around regulations, right? Starting with the Kenyan Act that was published last year, right? The Kenyan Act was actually the first substantive law when it comes to digital assets within the continent. and followed even before the Kenyan Act. Don't forget, we had a regulation in Nigeria, and in 2025 too, we had the Investment and Security Act that was published. 2025 that was published, right? And there was a definition of stablecoin in that act, and that act also gave the Securities and Exchange Control the authority to regulate the space. That was even before the Kenyan Regulation Act actually came into play. And we also saw Ghana trying to pass bills and all that. So we saw other markets within the continent either building, engaging with stakeholders to publish their own act. So 2025 was a very remarkable year for the ecosystem. We also saw some organizations that went public, right? Circle went public in the US, and Hashkey also went public in Hong Kong. So 2025 is that year that we can't forget we can't forget when we talk about stable coins, or even when we talk about digital asset, because a lot of things happened. We saw Bitcoin climb from wherever it was to $126,000, right?
Just stop there.
Exactly. Yeah. So that was a whole lot. We also saw institutional adoption. We saw Visa, and we saw Visa having some collaborations and all that, and we saw other institutions trying to do their own stablecoin product or strategy. So a lot happened. APSA trying to collaborate with Ripple. We saw Discovery Bank having its own partnership. So everyone wants to jump into the space. And 2025 was that year that everyone had to make that decision to be part of this ecosystem. So it was a remarkable year.
Quite the year, definitely. And I'm wondering how that's going to shape, what's going to play out in 2026. But a lot of talk about stable coins. We see that why Nigerians turn into stable coins. Naira was stable though, but obviously before, last year it wasn't that stable. Inflation that's tending downward. Then the FX limits, USD shortages. Then it's also seen as an alternative, to the dollar. So definitely a lot of reasons why Nigerians will want to, use stable coins. What are the interesting trends you see with stable coins?
I think it's very important we understand that stablecoin has nothing to do with speculation, right? Is solving real-time problems, right? And those problems weren't actually created in 2025. They weren't created in 2024. They've been there. But stablecoin has actually come to give us an opportunity, right, to solve those problems. And that's why you see so many people, institutions, businesses trying to adopt stablecoins. And I can say that in 2026, we are still going to see a whole lot, right, because of what has happened in 2025. In 2026, you see more regulators coming up with regulations, right? Even the regulations we had in 2025, there will be full implementation of those regulations in 2026, yeah? And we also see more collaborations between the traditional finance and the ecosystem, right? Like the commercial bank, the telcos, everyone would try to build some sort of product that will work on stable coins, kind of. So it's a technology that you can't really do without, especially for those people in the financial sector, because it's becoming like a payment rail, for not just for the continent, but for the world. And in 2026, we'll see that happen full time. And because there will be more regulations, there will be more people willing to jump into the space, create more products, and there will be more collaborations between the traditional finance and the ecosystem. Right.
So much to look out for, at this point. And I'm still wondering, do we have clear regulation, when it comes to, stable coins, in Nigeria? Very quickly now, we're running out of time.
Okay, for Nigeria, last year we saw the SEC Act that was published. And in that SEC Act, there was a definition of stable coins. And the class is being classified as security, because even the definition of security in the Act included virtual assets, and stablecoins was defined as virtual assets. So you can easily say that the Act sees stablecoins as a security, which brought it under the purview of the Securities and Exchange Control to regulate. So that's what we have at the moment. Probably when we start implementing the SEC regulations, there will be an opportunity to learn more and also trying to improve whatever we need to improve.
I guess 2026, we're just watching at this point.
Exactly.
I'm sure everything will fall in line.
Exactly.
Everyone will fall in line.
Exactly.
Thank you so much. It was great having you for this conversation. Lasbury Oludemosi, the Vice President, Global Operations, and Managing Director, Yellow Card Nigeria. Thank you so much for coming on
Thank
today.
you so much, Ladi. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Fantastic. Always great having you.